All right, I think we should start. Good morning, everyone. This is Lila. Do you have anything that you want to last minute things you want to mention before we actually begin?
Sure. So by attending this meeting, we're all happy you're here, and by being here, you're giving us permission to record and broadcast this recording, not live, but we have a list of all the recordings so people can watch them. If you don't want your image or your voice on the recording, you can turn off your video and or your audio, and you do that by going down to the bottom of your screen, and there's a couple of icons. There's a microphone icon that you can click on or off, and there's a video icon that you can click on or off. Jeff will keep the mic muted. Your mic's muted just to keep down the ambient noise. And if you want to talk, you can either unclick your mic and say hi. You can wave your arms like this, get our attention. You can write in the chat box, which is also down, one of the icons down in the lower part of your screen that says chat. Some people have used this technology a lot, some people never at all. So we are here to help. So if you have any questions, get our attention. We'll help you out.
All right. So this talk is what is competency-based learning, and I want to just take one little moment as an introduction before I introduce Candy. Many years ago, 5 of us, at the instigation of Dwight Pargee, who's sitting here listening, he was the president of the Feldenkrais Guild at the time, formed a task force in the Feldenkrais Guild, and we wanted to examine what does a beginning competent practitioner look like. And so we were asked to write a competency profile, and which we did. And the lead person on that was Candy Conino. And in the process, you also see on your screen Alice Friedman. So if Alice will wave, you can see Alice. So Alice and Candy and Dwight and myself were 4 of the 5 people who were on that task force. And in writing this competency-based profile, it was very, very clear that we wanted to produce the first competency-based Feldenkrais training program. And so I'll have Candy talk more about that, but not only competency-based, but to really, really grasp the essentials of how we examine, how a person becomes self-examining, how a person monitors their own progress, how a person continues to maintain a portfolio of the progress they make, and how a person looks within themselves into the areas that they most need to develop and fosters a learning plan for themselves to help them really move towards the areas that recognize the areas that they really grasp and understand and are really quite comfortable with as they go through the training program, and to look very carefully at the areas where they most need to develop themselves, whether it be public speaking or something with their understanding of function, anything that would be in the modality or within the Feldenkrais training process. So I would like to introduce Candy Conino, who even before we started our process 5 years ago, she had done a process in Europe, working with the people in Europe to develop an international Feldenkrais competency process. So she's really the queen of competence, maybe the royal empress. Her crown is well deserved. So I would like to introduce Candy and let her make any opening remarks that she would like to make. So Candy, I'll unmute you and go ahead and join in, please.
Good morning, for those of you who it's morning. So thanks, Jeff. So he sort of told you what our idea about competency-based is. Here's the thing. Some of you I know, and some of you I don't know. But I've been talking to people about competency-based training and competency-based assessment for 11 years. And what I've learned in those 11 years is that everybody already has an idea about what it is. And so no matter what I say, it's still going to be against the background of your idea. That's one thing I've learned. Second thing I learned, 50 years ago, number one rule of public speaking, know your audience. So here's some of you I know, some of you I don't know, but maybe the people I know you don't know. So what I'm kind of wishing is that each one of you would tell me and everybody else who you are, what's your interest in being on this call, which is kind of interesting. Here it is on a Sunday and you're with us together. What's your interest? And the special question, what does competency-based learning and competency-based assessment, what does that mean to you? Or maybe, is there a place in your life, a time that you can recall that you experienced that, and what was that like for you? Are you with me on this one? Okay.
I'll unmute people, so if you just raise your hand, I'll unmute you so you can talk. And everybody's raising their hand at once.
I'm going to call on you if you don't raise your hand.
Okay, Maureen, I'm going to go ahead.
My name is Maureen McHugh, and I'm a practitioner in Virginia. And I'm here because I realize that I don't know anything about this competency agenda that has been going on for 10 years. So I'm here to educate myself. And I enter the call with a certain amount, a combination of resistance and enthusiasm. Because in my training, which was all by the Amherst tapes, Feldenkrais said that each person would find their own signature. And he didn't know who would carry forward his work. And I felt that it was extremely open-ended, encouraging, and at the same time, we have so many people who graduate and don't feel competent. I didn't feel competent. I have a lot of room still to grow, I'm sure, in competency. So I'm interested in it, and I also feel, and I'm for it. And I also feel this question mark if competency-based agenda will overly narrow the outlook. That's it.
Do you have any experience in your life with a competency-based assessment or learning when it did narrow the scope?
I don't have any experience with what you have developed, so it's new to me.
It's interesting because this idea, and I'll talk more about that idea because it is, of course, kind of widespread concern in some parts of our community. And I was just wondering if that came from an experience of yours, or if it came from this sort of community-wide concern that this would happen.
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm speaking for community-wide concern. I'm not like a representative of anybody. I'm sure other people agree with me. Mostly, I felt that it was so opening of Feldenkrais as a human being to say that he wasn't a tennis pro training other tennis pros, that he was sparking something in each one of us that would grow. And I carry that forward in my own teaching. It's wonderful. And so I'm interested to hear what you'll have to say.
Thanks.
Suzanne, I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
So I have a PhD, so obviously there's certain levels of competency that you have to get through. You have a written exam, you have oral exam, you have a defense of your thesis, you have to complete certain courses, publish papers, that sort of thing. So that would be my experience of competency-based learning.
And how do you feel about it?
It was fine.
how would you feel about having a program with no competency-based learning?
That, and when I should also say I'm a Stop Pilates instructor, and that's also been competency-based. You have to pass exams, or written exam, a practical as well. So, and certainly the higher up you go, the more that you have to demonstrate your competency. So to me, it seems kind of strange not to have that, right? I mean, so that's been my experience from even Pilates instructor to a PhD. So, yeah, that would be kind of strange. You walk away and you don't have some sort of testing, if you will, of what you can do, or getting feedback in that way. Maybe it doesn't have to be formal like that, but I don't know. It seems very natural to me.
And when you hear this idea, which is a very common idea, that it will narrow our view, do you feel like,
In terms of applicants?
in terms of training, in terms of learning, the competency-based learning narrows the scope of your learning? Do you
I don't really see how it would, but maybe it's because I haven't experienced the other side. So, you know, I don't think that's possible for me to see in what way it would narrow it.
I was thinking about, you know, like when you do a research project, you have to ask a research question. You know how it is. You have to narrow that question down so much that in the end, you're kind of wondering if you're really answering a question that's worth answering at all.
Mm.
I don't know. It's just an interesting idea to kick around since you've been on the other end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any initial reactions to that. I think it's the norm for me.
And, you know, here's the thing. We're going to find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Who's raising their hand now?
Okay, Nikki, I got you. Go ahead.
So I currently work with special ed kids in elementary school setting, and my school's motto is building confident, competent, and compassionate leaders. And so I thought a little bit just about the word and competence and what does it mean. Honestly, I care more about building compassionate leaders, and especially in the world of special ed, that's very important that the non-special ed kids develop that. And what I have observed is that kids who learn to kind of monitor their progress of competence, I think that's what you guys are talking about, is that we will, as we go through the training, we'll monitor our progress of competence and be self-aware. And so what I've observed in that is that being that kind of self-aware builds compassion, because when you know your own process, then you can meet someone that's at a different place in their process, and you can meet them with some personal connection, and then kind of walk alongside them. So, and I also think I'm excited about the self-evaluation, because I think it also will help us in terms of how we present ourselves to the world. Because when you know your story, you can present your story in a way that people can join. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm coming with. I'm interested. I feel like Feldenkrais world, alongside this idea of competency, is probably something entirely new. Kind of what Maureen was saying, and I don't remember the other person, and I can't find your face, but kind of if you combine the two of like, let's be curious about what's going to happen, and let's also keep track of what's happening. That seems to me like a good way to go.
God, that's great. We need a t-shirt that says that. Somebody write that down. Let's be curious about what's happening and let's keep track of what's happened. I love it. Can that be our training t-shirt?
Sure.
Who else has something to say about this?
Go ahead, Jeff. I got you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that ideally, across all professions, you want people to be competent, so that they do what they say they'll do, or that they can handle doing what they set out to do. And so it's like if you have a plumber or a doctor, you ideally want them to be competent. And so I think the same would apply to Feldenkrais practitioner. And so I guess it's caught my interest that this is emphasized here in this program. And so, I guess I'm curious why this emphasis wasn't there before, or like how this is coming to fruition. So I guess that's where I'm at. So I'm just here interested in a practitioner training program. That's where I'm coming from.
What do you do now?
I do video production, so video shooting and editing.
And how do you know when you've done something really well?
Sometimes it's kind of difficult because like it's to your own taste, right? Like you have a vision of what you want to do, and it kind of unfolds over time as you approximate closer and closer to your vision. So that's one aspect you can kind of judge for yourself. And then of course the other aspect is like the client's interest and the client's vision and the client's taste, which may be different from yours. And so it's like, am I hitting theirs? Am I hitting mine? And so I guess it's continual approximations.
Same for us.
Hmm.
Who else?
I've got you. Go ahead, Elena.
Hi. So my name's Elena. I am a bit farther from this work than most people here, I think. I graduated from university last year, and right now I'm in a software job, so this would be a very big leap for me to do the training. But I am very interested and hopeful it will work out for me. And my question is about competency-based learning is I would like to see how much of a joint evaluation it would be, or I don't quite understand that, because I think like someone else has said that I do come from a background where I was constantly evaluated on what would seem to be competence. I just don't have a very good idea of what that would look like. So I'm curious to see where this conversation leads.
I'm going to try to give you a good idea.
Okay.
As best as I can, because we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to keep track of what's happening.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention the interesting thing is in my competency-based learning in the past, I wasn't a partner in my education as much as I could have been, meaning that so far my interest wasn't fully sparked. It'd be interesting to see what kind of, what could happen when my interest is fully there in a training like this, in a competency-based program. So curious about that.
And what got you interested in Feldenkrais? And is your interest sparked? Do you feel the spark?
I do, yeah. I'm reading a lot of materials, doing some online FDs for now. I don't know. It's more of a gut feeling. I can't really say anything that's too logical or yeah. And whenever I follow this gut feeling, good things have happened. So I'm hoping I'm right again.
I'm the same way, boy. There is not any logical reason in the world for me to take my training. It's the best thing I ever did, but there was no logical justification for it. All right, then. Who else?
Ken, did you want to take a moment and just tell us a little bit more about your own background, just so people will kind of get you a little bit?
Sure. So I am I'm a physical therapist by training, and and of course there was a lot of competency-based training. You know, there were a lot of practica exams, there were a lot of written exams. When I graduated from physical therapy school, I, like everybody else, had to take the big scary licensing exam. And in the licensing exam, not that many people pass it. You know, it's not just a given. So it is kind of a big scary exam. When I graduated from PT school, they pretty much told us that we had license to practice. That despite all of those years, all of those exams, all of those practica, that we still didn't actually know anything, but we had license to practice. And those of us who passed the exam the first time at least had a little vote of confidence from some objective place that we were not going to harm somebody as we were practicing. So it was kind of a really interesting place. And in fact, we were told, you know what? Find a job where there's a lot of other experienced therapists already working, because that's where your learning is going to come from. Don't get a job where you're working in a private practice, or you're on your own, or you're in some specialty, because you're not going to get the kind of learning that you need to build the confidence. So that's what I did. And I got a job in a hospital with a big staff. And there were lots of experienced other PTs that taught me a lot of stuff. You know, probably most of my education happened actually in the next 3 years in the hospital. I needed the baseline. I couldn't have learned what I learned in the hospital if I hadn't had the knowledge that I learned in PT school. I couldn't have just worked in the hospital. But I could not have gone off and worked on my own if I did not know how to handle all of those things that I learned how to handle when I worked in the hospital. And for that, I am eternally grateful. And this idea that this permission that I had not to know everything, in fact, caution that I didn't know anything, that was really a grace for me, and I think for all of us. You know, when we graduate from a Feldenkrais training program, there are not that many places where you can go work as a Feldenkrais practitioner, where you've got lots of other practitioners around you that you can say, help, I don't know what to do in this situation. And, you know, even for me, because I have a lot of compassion for my colleagues in that situation, I try to be available. But if I'm with a client, I'm giving a lesson, and somebody's texting me madly like, I got this problem, I don't know what to do, I can't always stop what I'm doing. That's different than if somebody's across the hall and they're, you know, you can bang madly on their door and say, please come help me. So I really wish that we could organize a situation where we have postgraduate mentoring like that there could really be on-the-job training, but we're far from that. After a decade, I hadn't been working in the hospital. After 3 years, I was pretty much working on my own. And I was predominantly by then a spine therapist. I was really interested in spinal injuries. I was really interested in on-the-job injuries because it's very complicated. You know, it has to do with the complexity of the anatomy and the pathology of the spine. It has to do with the complexity of the social dynamics at work. It has to do with educational levels. It has to do with fatigue. It's all very interesting and wonderful. And I was working in a facility that was like a tertiary referral facility for people who didn't get better going anywhere else. By the way, since that time, which would have been since 1986, I've pretty much been working with those people who didn't get better going anywhere else. That's kind of my specialty. And we were doing a bunch of research with people that had injuries. And by the way, we had this gym. We had this state-of-the-art gym. And one thing that we did with everyone is they worked out 3 times a week, no matter what, no matter where we had to start them. They worked out 3 times a week because we know that exercise is the answer, no matter what the pathology. In the end, surgery, no surgery, whatever, we know it's the end. So we exercised them and we tested them. So we had this fancy machine. And in that machine, we would strap them in and we could have them move in every dimension. They could bend forward and backward, bend side to side, they could twist, and we could measure what they were doing in all of those dimensions at one time. And we would have them work out in the gym and we would see how they got stronger and stronger and were able to control their movement and stop on a dime and change directions. So we were documenting what the exercise was doing. And interestingly enough, we did this fantastic job. By the way, we addressed everything else also. We had psychologists on board. We had nutritionists on board. We had everybody on board. These people, had a year of the best care anybody could give them. And all measured, all documented. And most of them, after a couple of years, came back. And that was very upsetting to me. Why did they come back? We addressed everything we could address, and they came back. Really? So I was very interested in this, as were some other people that were actually using the same equipment, some other people in New York. I live in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill. There were some people in New York doing some research. These 2 groups of people were doing research about fatigue, because we know that people are injured when they get tired. They were doing research when they were having people move in this machine until they got fatigued. Fatigue meaning that their ability to generate force, to control their acceleration and deceleration, to control their change of direction was compromised. And they learned this really interesting thing. When they did this to people who were college athletes, strong college athletes, and they had them move in the machine to the point of fatigue. Before they ever showed fatigue, the movements that they weren't doing primarily started to change. They started to get disorganized. In other words, if somebody was bending forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, the measurements that we were making in the twisting plane and the side bending plane, the unconscious parts of the movement got completely disorganized and not helpful, far before actual slowdown or weakness was demonstrated in the primary plane of movement. That was in college athletes. The same group did another study in the same way of fatigue in professional ballerinas. Professional ballerinas, when they start to fatigue, they simply show a decrease in their ability to generate force in every direction simultaneously. They don't show the disorganization. So what I learned from this was that it was the unconscious parts of the movement, the thing that they're not thinking about, that was the sign that fatigue had set in and meant that they weren't stable. So I went back and I looked at all the graphs of all the people that we had tested, hundreds of them. And despite the fact that they had been working out in the gym, that they had had the best care ever, none of them, after a year of working out, were able to demonstrate organized support in the unconscious planes of the movement. Not one. They remained disorganized. So in other words, we sent them back to work, strong, but already fatigued. It was the unconscious parts of the movement that nothing we were doing was addressing. Well, when I was in PT school, I did my research on teaching motor tasks. And my advisor said, hey, you should check this Feldenkrais thing, because I think that's a way of teaching through movement. That was back in the day before, Google, being able to get, before online existed. The only thing I could get was a couple of Feldenkrais books from the Library of Congress. This is back when you had to write to the Library of Congress, and then they would send you that little package. So I got a couple of books, and I read the books. And what I remembered from these books was that this was a way of teaching the unconscious parts of the movement. So I said to myself, well, what we're doing is not working. I tried to convince the facility that I was working in that it was not working. And, you guys will find this out. I can be a little bit obnoxious. I did print up all those graphs, and I wallpapered the entire conference room in them so that they would believe me. And they did agree to let me take my Feldenkrais training. So that's why I started my Feldenkrais training, because I wanted a way to address the unconscious parts of the movement. Any questions about that before I go on and tell you about competency?
Candy, would you also give a little bit of your point of view on, to answer Jeff's question, for what reason it hasn't been addressed in trainings before?
I think I'm happy to. Yeah. And I don't think that I can answer this question in a neutral way. Right. Having faced down the angry mobs of people, and I think Maureen actually answered it beautifully, that there's a fear that because when we train people in this work, we create a learning environment that is so sensory rich, that is so deep, that is so profound, that there is a fear that introducing thought, language, words, measurement will ruin that entirely. And that this thing that actually gives the method its power will be just completely disempowered. And the work will no longer have any worth. That's the fear. And I would like to say that I've been doing this work a long time now. And I would just like to say, from my standpoint, this work can take anything you throw at it. It is so strong. It is so powerful. It is so deep. It does not matter what you throw at it. It can take it. Because believe me, I am the Samsonite gorilla of Feldenkrais practitioners. It can take it. Maureen, would you like to add to that?
Just a second, let me unmute you. I got you. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm here because basically I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm trying to find people who would be interested in this. And I felt that my own training severely lacked a lot of direction. So that's where I am predominantly. But as I said, first of all, Candy, what you said about words and so on, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I consider myself an outlier, because I use a lot of words. I use a lot of intellectual understanding of movement. I'm not at all interested in this pure sensory experience, lacking words or emotional connection. So the only thing that for me is the real question mark is this thing where Feldenkrais said, I am not making little me's. I am not a tennis pro producing other tennis pros. And I felt that, I'm repeating myself, just so opening. So we'll see. So I guess that's my big question for you. I don't know your program. I'm here to learn. Do you feel that you preserve that feeling of mystery and openness?
Oh, yes. So let me, here, I got to tell you this story. This is a good story, this thing that happened this morning. I am at the beach on vacation with a bunch of my friends. And we come to the beach at this time to celebrate our birthdays. We're all the same age. It happens that 5 of the 6 of us are Feldenkrais practitioners. And one is an attorney and an ombudsman. And so this morning, I was up early in that, early morning. I'm just here. It's so beautiful. We have a house right on the water. It's gorgeous. I was drinking my tea, and I was reading the New York Times online in a kind of a half-hearted way that you have to read the news these days. And an article caught my eye, and I started reading this article. Still in that halfway happy, it was a beautiful place, kind of in the post-ATM state. So I read this article, and the article is getting more and more and more and more interesting to me. By the time I'm done with the article, I'm just like, wow. And my girlfriend Caroline is on the sofa, the next sofa over, and I say, Caroline, I just got to tell you about this article. So I start to tell her about the article, in which there was an account of a research project. So I start telling her about that article, and I realize that as I'm telling her, I really didn't retain all the details. So as I'm telling her about this article that I just read it, I have to go back and look at it again and say, oh, it was actually this. And then Caroline asked me a question about it, a clarification question. And I'm like, I don't know. I just read the article. I have to go back and I have to look again. It was really interesting. And then somebody else comes into the living room and I say, I'm going to send you this article. This is the most interesting article. And that person says, don't send it to me. Just tell me about it. So now I have a second chance to tell this person about the article. And this person asked me another few questions. Now I've not only just read the article, I've gone back and looked at the article, and I still have to go back and look again to answer the questions. That is competency-based self-assessment and peer assessment. It happened this morning. And all we're talking about in competency-based learning is that you have a day, or you in a training program, you have a morning. And as Moshe said, Moshe said you find somebody that you love, that you care about, and you write, or you tell them what you learned, or you get a big copybook and you write what it is. In competency-based learning, you either in self-assessment, you tell yourself, you write yourself, what did you learn? In peer assessment, you tell somebody else, just like I did with my friends this morning. And you're trained from the very beginning to ask open-ended questions that help someone else deepen their own learning, just like my friends did this morning. They asked me open-ended questions, which pointed out to me that I didn't actually learn everything I could have learned. So I went back. Those questions made me curious. I wanted to be able to answer the questions because, in fact, they were really important questions. I went back and I looked. They helped me learn. Now, if I told any of you about the article, I would nail it. And if next week I tell somebody else about the article, I might nail it again, or I might need to go back and look. That's self-assessment and peer assessment. And if right now I wrote down what I learned, or if I made a video of what I learned and I sent it to you, I would have started my portfolio. That's the entire process. There are lots of other tools and kind of materials that we use for prompts, like the Feldenkrais Practitioner Profile is a prompt. And there are these super duper cool little cards that have one competency on them at a time, and they're used as prompts. But all of these materials are used to serve the practitioners and the students. They are absolutely not meant so that you will narrow yourself to become them. They are not, there is not an expectation that you will conform yourself to meet the demands of the products and the materials. The products and the materials were created, as are the processes that were created, to help each and every person follow their own spark, become better and better at whatever it is that they want to become better at now. And when we have a learning plan, for me, in this situation with this article I was telling you about, I'm going to go and read the actual research, not just the report in the Times. I need to go read the actual research. I have some more questions now. That's my learning plan. So in this training program, we are going to use words. We are going to go from deep experience into thinking, into languaging, and into planning for what the next thing is we want to learn, and back into deep experience. It's important that we learn at in every state of consciousness, that we learn the same things, right? So that we can access it from any state of consciousness that we're in, not just lying on the floor deep in ATM, but also facing an angry mob of people, or a questioning mob, or a group of people that you're trying to explain the method to, and you're trying to reach for the words. If you haven't practiced reaching for the words to express your own experience, if you haven't heard other people reach for words, then how are you supposed to take this work forward? I'll tell you another story about this. One of the people that I'm here at the beach with was one of my first students that became a practitioner. And I learned this from her because I am not a verbal learner. I am not a sequential learner. I'm just one of those like snap, got it learners. And she is a different kind of learner. And when I was mentoring her when she started her training, and I didn't really understand that everybody in a Feldenkrais training doesn't just feel it and know it. And she said to me one day, really tearful, angry, upset with me, she said to me, "You don't understand. If I can't say it It doesn't exist. Laura likes that. Honestly, this is her reality. And you know what? It turns out, I didn't know, that's the reality of many, many people. If they cannot say it, it's not real. And that changed my teaching forever. My ATM teaching, what I do in F5 practice, what I do in a workshop, anywhere. Because for her, if she can't say it, and I need my people to be able to take it forward and use their language. You know, in my training, Jeff Haller was trainer back in the day. And he was the first person that came in every day and said, so, what did you learn yesterday? And he expected us to answer. That was novel and shocking. Nobody ever asked us that before. Now, I have to say, I had a really good training. And people would walk around the room and say, hey, what are you doing and why? But nobody ever asked me to retain it for the next day. But I learned to do that from Jeff, to always retain what I did, what I learned. And now I do it as a matter of course. If I learn anything, which, by the way, brings me to the next story about competency or remembering. One of the women that's here with me, we were at a seminar about 10 years ago on research on memory. And this person that was teaching this seminar was talking about the memory studies that were done surrounding the O.J. Simpson trial. Is this interesting to you guys? You can nod. Are you okay? Okay. So there's this idea that when there's an event around which there's a lot of energy, that is burned into your memory in a particular way that other memories aren't. So these people kind of did this very interesting study because they knew the verdict was going to come. So just a few days before, they gathered a bunch of people together that were their subjects. And so that they had them already, and then they checked with them. They asked them to recount the story within 3 days after the verdict, to recount the story of where they were, how they felt, and what was going on when they heard the verdict. Then they contacted the same people 15 months later and asked them to recount the very same thing, where they were, how they felt, and what was going on. 15 months later, there was something like an 80% consistency rate. Then they contacted them 15 months after that, so 30 months after the event, by which time the stories were way out there. There was a very small consistency rate. And the interesting thing was that many of the stories that had been told the first 2 times that were being told now were completely different. When they looked further into it, then as it turned out, people did not remember what happened. They remembered what they told people happened. There was some other research that followed that, because remember there was that time when there was a question about false memories with people who had suffered abuse as children. So there was kind of some other research, which I won't really bore you with, about that. But this is, as it turns out, you remember what you tell people. You don't remember what happened. It becomes very, very important for your own learning that you tell the story again and again and again. You know that sort of rule in medical school: watch one, do one, teach one. It's probably the teaching the one that deepens the learning the most. Okay, ask me questions now. I think that's enough of me chattering along. What else would you like to know? How does this make you feel? Did that answer enough questions about the process? Because the process in a training program would be that we're going to teach you how to ask each other the questions. We're going to teach you how to listen to what somebody's saying. We're going to teach you how to talk to each other about the work, how to start creating a portfolio from these experiences that happen time after time. So we'll have the experiences. The trainees will have them with each other. I will be there. All of the staff will be there. We'll be continually going through these processes, helping you start documenting, so figuring out what did happen. Yeah, so we're going to pay attention to what is happening. We're going to tell each other what is happening. We're going to document what did happen. And then as we look back on what did happen, we start to figure out, where are the places where your interest has really filled out your education? And where are the places that your interest has, left you some blank places? Are you ready to fill in those blank places? If you are, how? In what order? What resources do you need to help you? How can we help you? That's how it will go, day after day, week after week, experience after experience in this training program. Comments? Questions?
Candy will be at every segment in the training program, all 12 of the segments. She won't be the entire time of the segment, but she will be there at least 3 days each segment. So there will be a very, very consistent follow-up throughout the entire training program for you to continually be able to be in this questions for yourself.
And it's individuals. It's following your own needs, desires, interests. No one's making you get funneled into some standard. Does this interest any of you? Oh, here's a question. So, Jenny, can I just read your question? How will the educational team be prepared to work in this way? Here's the great thing. Almost everyone on the educational team has already been trained to work in this way. And we will, by the way, you guys got to know this. This is absolutely my commitment. We will be doing this ourselves, with each other, for each other, because we are going to be way better at this by the end of this training, just like you're going to be way better at this by the end of this training. This is us too. We are all in it together.
Let me just add a little something here. This is you can sense Candy's passion, and I think I don't know all of you, but my passion, I believe that this work is so profound that it really truly needs to be in the world and in the marketplace with a much higher level of professionalism. And so and I believe the work needs to be transformed in the way that it's perceived in the marketplace. So this training program is designed to move us as a group of people into having the means to go into the community with a much higher standard as beginning practitioners. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, that's the passion. And it is true, Jenny, just so you really understand. I mean, our team with Dwight and Alice and Candy and myself, we were 4 of the 5 people that wrote the competency project. So it will be carried throughout the training process.
I'd like to jump in here for a minute. I am Allison Rapp, and I'm going to be teaching practice building in the training. And one of the things that I bring to this is, I think, the longest experience with Moshe of anybody. I was in the San Francisco training, and I heard him say, write it down, tell somebody else, write what you think is important. And we sort of did that. Then I heard him say in Amherst, write it down, tell someone else what you think is important. And there was a big deal because people from the San Francisco training told the people in the Amherst training how to hide behind the curtain and take notes. And Moshe found them one day, and he was really upset because people weren't doing the thing that he said. I have for a long time thought that Moshe really didn't teach us how to do that. He told us to do it, but he didn't teach us how. And one of the things that's so exciting to me about this training is that this training is going to teach people how to do the thing that Moshe said was the way to learn. And I haven't seen that. I've been working in training programs since 1991, and I have not seen this in any training until now. And it's really, really exciting to me because to me, this is what Moshe wanted us to do, but he didn't know how to teach us to do that, which, it's like he was a genius in other ways. We didn't need him to be a genius in every way, but it may have been that he thought that it was self-evident how we should do it. But the reality is that the amount of work that's been put into this over years in order to bring this to this point is amazing. And I think it's going to produce practitioners who are actually doing and able to do what Moshe wanted all along. And so to me, it's thrilling.
Vita, do you have a question?
I have a comment. Just after hearing you talk about the continual questioning and teaching people to learn how to ask open-ended questions, I just want to tell everybody that I just finished the IOPS program with Jeff and his staff. And we were starting to, the focus of the program, part of it was to learn how to ask open-ended questions. So that was very different and very enlightening than my training. And I trained with Jeff, but everybody has evolved. So I just want to say to the people out there that might be thinking about the training, that asking open-ended questions and then thinking about what you're doing and going back and revising it and telling the stories and telling people what you've done and what you've learned, I think is going to be amazing. It is a leap of faith, but I think it's going to really bring out and train practitioners at a totally different level to be out there to work with people. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity. I wish I could do it again. And all of you that are out there that are thinking about it, go for it. And if anybody has questions and wants to call me directly or talk about Jeff and the training, please do so.
One of the reasons that this is so important to me is because I feel like practitioners, it's very solitary work, this work that we do. We work with one person or we teach a group, and the feedback that we get is kind of like the thing with the videos, right? And, maybe we teach a class and it wasn't somebody's personal taste, or it wasn't what they were ready for, or maybe we see a client and they just don't like us for some reason, or they love us no matter what we do. So the feedback that we get can be financial, right? If they like us, they'll come back. If we did good work, they'll come back. And that is not necessarily at all accurate. And we are endlessly then giving feedback to ourselves. Also may not be accurate because it's disorganized feedback. right? We're always assessing how did we just do without some kind of framework about assessing how did we just do. And we get in habits. I can tell you this from mentoring a lot of practitioners. We get in habits of assessing our lessons, of assessing our performance, that always bring us to the same place. When we have these kind of structures, tools, processes, then we can start to move toward a different place. They force us to kind of give up our habits in a way and look at ourselves in a novel way, a more complete way. So for Feldenkrais practitioners everywhere who are just stuck in their own experience, it's a really wonderful thing.
It's actually very much in keeping with the Feldenkrais method. This Candy used the word force us to alter our path. It's a constraint. And when we learn awareness through movement and we go through the lessons and we begin to work, in every moment, the constraints of the lesson, the opportunities in the lesson to inhibit something that we've historically done so that something new can take place. So first of all, we have to really learn the advantage of these constraints, and we have to learn how to utilize constraints. And so this whole process, if we really gain the skills of working with ourselves and asking these questions and developing our new learning plans, in and of itself, it will take us to a place that we've never been before. And at that point in time, it is open-ended. The learning is open-ended. At that point in time, the learning is nonlinear. And at that point in time, the infinite degrees of potential and variation that exist within every person becomes absolutely awake within the person. There's a quality of being in yourself, and from this being in yourself begins to, you foster creativity and spontaneity. And so the act in and of itself brings us to a place that doesn't let us maintain the habitual structures that keep us in the milieu that we've historically been in. It's absolutely brilliant. It's wonderful. And I can't tell you, see, Candy comes to many of my, when I'm at the conference, she comes to my conference presentation. And then afterwards, she's so kind. She says, "Would you like some feedback?" And then she says, "Well, when would you like it? And how would you like it? And where would you like it?" And because she asked me, so she doesn't just say, "I'm going to give you feedback." She sets up the conditions by which I then can engage in the question of, yes, feedback. I would like feedback. And then we make an agreement as to what feedback and what we're going to talk about. In other words, each of us respect each other so completely. And her feedback is always so spot on that it has significantly advanced my ability to work in when I give conference presentations or I'm giving my ATM classes. It's an absolute pleasure and a joy to have Candy as one of my colleagues and one of my partners in my learning process. And we want to guarantee to you that that will be the case for every one of you in the training program. I believe we've gone past our time, so if there's a last question or a last comment, I would be happy to entertain it, or Candy would. And Jeff, I think we need to go further as to why, but we'll do that at some other time. Lila, do you want to jump in and just tell people about future FTA talks or where they can find out about them?
Yep, I just posted a link to the upcoming talks. We have basically one a month, different subjects. So check those out. They're free. You can spread the word to anyone and everyone to join us. And also, if you're interested in doing a in-person weekend workshop, pre-training workshop, we have several of those scheduled. There's one coming up in Berkeley. There's one coming up in Portland, Oregon. There'll be a few more scheduled. So those are really great ways, if you are considering the training, just a really great way to meet some of the staff and experience what being in the training is like. So learn by doing. And as always, be in touch anytime with me or any of the staff. A lot of you have already contacted us. If you haven't, you might maybe put a little message in the chat box. I've been chatting with some of you that I don't know. Most of you we have on our list, but we just are curious why you're here and what your interests are and how we can help you. Jeff, you're muted.
I'm happy to meet with any of you. I've spoken with a number of you over Zoom. I'm happy to set up a time for us to talk individually. So please feel free to contact me. My address is jeff@insidemoves.org. So let me know if you would like to have a conversation with me. I think it's first of all, it's a requirement to be in the training program. You have to spend an hour with me anyway. So why not start now? Nikki survived hers. Alina's survived her talk. I think she's still here. So there's been a few people. All right. I think it's time for us to stop and leave. Candy, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time with us and inviting us to experience the very first part of what it is to answer open-ended questions and to be in the state of open-endedness. So
thanks for letting me preach the talk.
Thank you so much for bringing it. And to Dwight and Alice and Lila, Laura, Allison, these are the staff. Donna Blank. Donna came in late, so wave Donna. Donna is going to teach deep presence in the training program. So we're looking forward to seeing and having all of you. We're looking forward to having you in the class. So see you next month or call. Thank you. Bye-bye.